Go live, Maria.
Hello, everyone, and welcome all members and guests to our annual Christmas event. My name is Maria Gilanides, and I'm this year's president of the DIA. Because of the global pandemic, we have opted to continue to hold our meetings, but as virtual sessions. The two key mandates of the Digital Imaging Association are to provide education and networking opportunities for our members. At this time, we have to forego networking for everyone's safety, but I do hope you find the educational aspect worthwhile, and we look forward to your feedback. Our membership is comprised of pre-press, printers, packaging converters, designers, advertisers, print buyers, equipment, and consumable manufacturers and vendors. If you are with us as a guest, please consider joining the Digital Imaging Association. Today's session is an example of the high caliber meetings we run. If you would like more information on membership, please contact either myself or Marg McLeod at 416-254-4941 or marg@digitalimagingassociation.com. Like most trade associations today, financial stability does not come from the membership revenues alone. And so we turn to the vendor suppliers to support our goals as an association. We are honored to continue to receive the support and recognition of the DIA's contribution to the growth and development of the graphics industry from the following companies. Platinum sponsors, Canon, HP, Konica Minolta, Spicers, SwissQ Print. Gold sponsors, Adobe, Fujifilm, Graphics Canada, Heidelberg, Kodak. Silver sponsor, Sydney Stone. Please consider these companies and their demonstrated support of the industry when making your purchasing decisions. Technology for this webinar has been generously provided by HP. Part of today's webinar constitutes the DIA's annual general meeting, and as such, we need to conduct some corporate business. I'd like to introduce the 2022 Board of Directors. On behalf of the membership, I accept this board of directors as nominated and the year-end financials as approved. Officers, past president, Stephen Longmire, Sydney Stone. President, Maria Gilanides, Spicers. Secretary Treasurer, Mark Norlock, Canon. First Vice President, Paul Charvitas, TSUS4. Second Vice President, Ray Fagan, Heidelberg. Directors, Jason Foubert, Marquis. Mike Hallowell, Kodak. Jason Hamilton, AGFA. Paul McCarthy, HP. Ed Rooney, Con Sainer, Konica Minolta. Deanne Sinclair, Cambridge Label. Dan Thompson, Italic Press. Bob Weller. A special thank you to this hardworking group who volunteer their time to direct the DIA on behalf of the membership. It is now my great honor to single out Stephen Longmire with a special thank you. As the outgoing president, Stephen ended up serving a 2-year term and took the DIA successfully through the pandemic with grace and wisdom. At a time that saw the demise of many businesses and associations, the DIA continues to thrive. An expression of the board's appreciation is being sent to Stephen. Stephen, I personally want to thank you for your contributions. You leave behind big shoes to fill. I also want to take this opportunity to acknowledge Marg McLeod, our association administrator, for her utmost dedication and leadership. Thank you, Marg, for devoting your time to ensure the ongoing success and richness of the DIA. Thank you also to our members who have stayed with us and continue to support the DIA. We are very fortunate to have such a cohesive and enthusiastic following during these difficult times. The board's objectives this year are to increase benefits to members through the caliber of our meetings. We have seen attendance at our general meetings steadily increase, and we will continue to create meetings which attract both current and new members. Increase value for our sponsors and increase sponsorship of the association, and lastly, to continue to increase membership. At this point, I'd like to introduce today's topic, Roadmap for Conferences and Trade Shows. How will the learning continue? Today's your chance to hear what the two really big players think, D-Scoop and Drupa. Trade shows and conferences pretty much stopped with the COVID-19 pandemic. Many organizations tried virtual meetings, but attendee engagement was generally poor. Interestingly, reports are that many company sales were unaffected by their absence from trade shows and conferences. And in fact, they saved money by not participating. Does this experience mean conferences and trade shows will die off? Companies can coast if they have good momentum, and especially if their competition also coasts. However, when competitors start pedaling again, companies that ignore trade shows or conferences will fall behind. Our moderator for today is Stephen Longmire, National Sales Manager, Sydney Stone, and past President, Digital Imaging Association. Stephen's roles include researching new product lines and manufacturers to distribute, setting pricing structures, managing the partner program, and conceiving and implementing marketing initiatives to support sales efforts. Prior to joining Sydney Stone, Stephen was the associate publisher of Print Action for 13 and a half years and was responsible for sales, special projects, organizing and hosting the Canadian Printing Awards, as well as Print Forum. Stephen has supported the Canadian Print Scholarship Fund for many years and has also served on the DIA board for 6 years, including the last 2 as president. Stephen, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you very much, Maria, for the kind words, and we're extremely lucky to have you as president this year. We're very much looking forward to our progress moving forward. I would like to encourage our attendees as well to please feel free to submit questions to our panel during this presentation today. You can do so during either the chat or the Q&A tabs on the bottom of your screens. If you'd like to direct your question to a specific panel member, please indicate that panelist's name within the question. If not, I'll pose it to the panel as a whole. I'd like to introduce our esteemed panel today, beginning with Sabine Gelderman. Sabine entered the International Trade Fair business in 1992 after graduating from Johannes Gutenberg University in Menzig. I'm sorry, I probably butchered that pronunciation of the German city. During her career, she's been responsible for various international trade fairs with a dedicated focus on strategic development and further internationalization. Sabine joined Messe Düsseldorf in 2013 as Director of Drupa and Global Head Print Technologies. The long-term experiences in the international trade fair businesses, linked with the technical expertise of the VDI, Association for German Engineers, created the ideal basis for her current area of responsibility. Next to Drupa, the world-leading trade fair for print technology, she's also in charge of the ongoing international expansion of related trade fairs in the Drupa portfolio in Asia, such as All in Print China, Shanghai, Pack Print International, Bangkok, Thailand, Pack Print Plan Manila, Philippines, and Print and Digital Convention in Düsseldorf, Germany. Thank you for joining us today, Sabine.
Thank you very much, Stephen.
Our next panelist is MC Elias. MC brings 4 years of nonprofit expertise to the D-Scoop team, where she managed highly diverse and inclusive communities. She thrives by empowering others to achieve their goals and by creating meaningful relationships. Having once planned an event for 550 people on a budget of $200 and 2 large cakes, she describes herself as solution-oriented, creative, and resourceful. I would say so, my goodness. MC has a bachelor degree from George Mason University in sociology and a minor in Spanish, a small homage to her Peruvian roots. And MC is currently taking a certification course from the University of South Florida on diversity, equality, and inclusion in the workplace. In her free time, MC enjoys dance, workout classes, hiking, and painting, and is an avid animal lover. She's recently found a strong passion for the outdoors and took her first semi-solo camping trip. MC will be assisting Peter as a resource, but not presenting on this panel. Thank you for joining us, MC. And as that brings us to our final panel member today, which is Peter Van Tielsing. He's the Chief Operating Officer for D-Scoop. Peter has seen magazines launch in print, shift to digital, and love print again. He's witnessed the massive success of direct mail campaigns, email campaigns, and the power of combining the two. He started in traditional print and moved into digital asset management and web-based solutions related to offset and digital print. With more than 20 years in printing, Peter has experienced the industry's many transformations firsthand. It's one of the many valued qualities he brings to the D-Scoop community, having been part of the leadership team since 2011. As regional director, Peter helped establish D-Scoop in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, and supported the volunteer leadership building, the community's membership and culture that it is known for today. Since 2016, Peter supported the D-Scoop team with all things operational. Peter lives in the Netherlands with his wife and 3 sons. He loves traveling with his family. I'd like to thank our esteemed, thanks Peter, and thank our esteemed panel today for joining us. I'd like to start by asking a couple of questions to the panel as a whole. I'll begin posing to Sabine, if you don't mind. I'll start with a question of, do you find that many companies within the printing industry have been using COVID-19 sort of as, I don't want to say as an excuse, but almost as a reason to coast and not explore perhaps new technologies or delay the release of said new technologies? Or do you feel that it will be the opposite when they do open again?
Thank you very much, Stephen, first of all, for the nice introduction, and a very warm welcome on behalf of Drupa as well to all attendees from Düsseldorf. So I think it's just the opposite. In terms of the pandemic acted like a catalyst, and everybody, if you're talking about a supplier, manufacturer, or even print service provider, they all had to embrace new technology and they had to deal with increasing digitization. So I think it was a period, or looking back to the past 20 months, everybody has to adapt and adjust technology and meet the requirements of customers. So I think our industry is certainly in the period where skills have been increased and technology has been embraced. And it's, I think, a huge process as well of creativity. And on top of that, I think the print industry has experienced in the past 10 or even more years a lot of consolidation and change. So I think in these times, entrepreneurs turned into crisis manager, and everybody has to face the new challenges to maintain a competitive advantage. So it's definitely, I think, even though there might be differences from regions and countries or the size of a company as well, if you're talking about let's say a family-owned business or a huge, let's say, company and corporate company, there might be certainly differences in adapting. But I think in overall or in general, the industry has shown a lot of creativity.
Fantastic. Peter, would you like to answer this one?
Yes, well, thanks, Stephen, for the nice introduction and having us on the panel. I would certainly echo Sabine's words in this case. The the resilience, I think, that we've seen within the community has been very significant on personal levels, but also on, as Sabine said, on the innovation and adapting to the reality. So, we have our member base very diverse across all segments and around the globe. We could see the pandemic traveling around, helping each other, figuring out what lockdowns mean for running a business, for getting supplies in, but also seeing diversification. So obviously a significant uptick in labels and packaging, commercial printers thinking about diversification as well. And yes, I mean, they had to be creative. If you were already online, that was a huge advantage over if you were not, but it also accelerated other businesses that didn't have an online presence, or at least the capability to deliver online. And I think the last part, I think they also were very creative in their sales process, both in selling as in buying, where it became much more of a group process and being able to connect multiple sites around the globe through technology like this today. So yes, I would agree. Yes, I think this has been an accelerator for innovation for sure.
Absolutely. Sort of born out of necessity, if nothing else. I know I had never hosted a webinar virtually prior to March of last year. And now I think this might be my 13th or 14th so far now. So it's sort of, and companies having to do sort of the same, obviously a much larger scale. Yes, it's really been some extreme innovations, which is fantastic. I recognize that obviously no one can accurately predict. There's, different ups and downs in terms of case counts and whatnot. But do you think that in-person events will resume in a certain time frame? Obviously, spring of next year is a key one. Is that sort of the track where a lot of where you think? I'll start back with Peter actually on this one.
Yeah. Well, I think it's already for us. It has started to resume already. We've hosted some smaller gatherings where we can. So we did 2 open houses across the just the border to the south for this group in the US. One in San Diego, one in Milwaukee. And it will take some time, but yes, they're definitely back on the table. But they'll definitely be different. And for us, you know, the big next one will be March 6 to 9 at the Gaylord Rockies in Colorado in 22. So fingers crossed. We hope that one will happen, and so far we're pretty confident that it will.
I saw that. I actually saw that LinkedIn post today. It's a beautiful looking resort, stunning natural beauty, and a great facility as well.
Yeah.
That's Sabine.
Yeah, so talking about the past 20 months, there certainly have been different waves due to the pandemic. However, if I talk about Messe Düsseldorf, we in regular year or pre-COVID years had a total of 50 trade fairs taking place on our fairgrounds. And so the, let's say, the restart has been since September this year. And we were very happy and pleased that we had 3 major trade fairs on our fairground. So the Caravaning Salon, the Occupational Healthy Trade Fair, and 2 weeks ago, only the Medical Show, which is considered to be the worldwide leading trade fair for medical devices and technology. And needless to mention, we had to implement a very, let's say, reasonable hygienic and safety protection concept that was perceived very well from our exhibitors and visitors. So 3 trade fairs that happened, at least in Düsseldorf. And after all, Germany is considered to be one of the major, let's say, countries worldwide when it comes up to trade fairs. And just to give you an idea, in 2020, 2/3 of world leading trade fairs had been postponed or either canceled. And in regular years in Germany, we have approximately 180,000 exhibitors and 10 million visitors participating at trade fairs. And our umbrella association in Germany estimated the economic damage coming up to 42 billion euros, only spoken for 2020. And as 2021 has seen as well postponements and even cancellations of trade fair, the first half of 2021 was quite challenging again. However, now, looking at the first quarter of 2022, we are still preparing the boat show as well, the world leading trade fair for boating and diving and many other, let's say, nautic sports. Then even the world leading trade fair for wine, the ProWine show. And Euroshop is as well considered, or Eurosys as one of the leading trade fair for the retail business. So it's, again, like Peter said, you have to observe continent by continent, and it's varying a lot. So when we were in a complete lockdown in 2020, for example, one of our trade fairs in the portfolio of printing technologies took place without not a big damage with the All-in-Print Shanghai show in China. So now again, China is in trouble and has seen lockdowns in Shanghai and other cities. So Germany recovered to a certain extent. But now with the new mutation, Omicron, we are again quite challenged, spoken for now, not even only for trade fairs, but for the overall, let's say, retail business and other economic sectors. But still, we have to implement what we just did with security and hygienic factors, a reasonable concept that is reliable. And we have proven that it's still possible to host shows or conferences during the pandemic times. And we are quite optimistic, as Peter said as well, for the upcoming months in 2022, that we are proceeding following our plans.
Oh, fantastic. Actually, I'll stick with you, Sabine, on this one question. How was the attendance of those events that went ahead in relation to years past? I know I myself almost took for granted having all these international trade shows that sometimes almost became laborious. It's like going here, going there. Great fun though. Now I miss them so much. I'm almost dying to get back to an international trade show. How was the attendance when you put them back on? How was that compared to years past?
So in general, not only talking about our events at our fairground in Düsseldorf, but in general, all events that took place again in Germany since September has seen, let's say, decreases of roughly 30 to 40% in terms of exhibitor attendance, as well as a space or net space and even visitors. So that's quite understandable in times where we're still talking about travel restrictions and even, let's say, registrations or at least restrictions when it comes up to vaccine, for example. The more international trade fairs have been in the past, in times prior to the pandemic, the more the damage has been. Because, for example, in overall European Union, we don't accept, for example, vaccine coming from China, from let's say India, or even from Russia. So Sputnik or Sinopharm is still not allowed. So you still can enter, but you have to respect then self-testing or PCR tests to enable you to participate at trade fairs. So there are still barriers and challenges for trade fairs that are very much depending on a huge international participation. The more local you were focused, or the more national, the better you were in the past weeks and months. However, just facing Medica, for example, at the World Leading Trade Fair for Medical Technologies, we still had more than 50,000 visitors and more than 100 countries. And that simply underlined, even from Asia, a huge proportion, that trade fairs have such a relevance for, let's say, for the relevant sector and industry segment. And if you want to meet and at least drive sales, platforms where you meet on a physical level obviously are still key. And that has been proven very well. But I just wanted to underline again, needless to mention, you're not getting back right away to facts and figures and KPIs that shows had prior to the crisis. And there are some forecasts. If we're looking at, let's say, experts of the industry, they predict that, in general or on a global level, you might need 2 to 3 years to get back. Spoken about every single industry segment to get back to previous facts and figures on the exhibitor and visitor, let's say, scale.
Peter, I'll pose the same question to you based on the recent regional events you had as well. How did you find the attendance to events past?
Yeah, well, obviously we are a little bit different than the operation that Sabine leads, because this group represents a community that connects sort of worldwide, and not just at events, at least at in-person events. And so for us, these regional events we did, the attendance was good. I think two things come into play about attendance. One, for sure, health and safety regulations and guidelines, right? Country, state, city, and also the host itself. And then you have obviously the comfort level of the visitors, right? So how comfortable are they in actually traveling and attending? And I think the third one that probably plays a significant part as well is how corporations deal with their staff and their employees with travel restrictions and travel guidelines. I think the last one certainly that has evolved with the increase in vaccinations, that there is a different approach, and they understand the importance, as Sabine was saying, of meeting in person and allowing their employees to travel, which has a knock-on effect for others as well. As a comparison, I mean, the in-person events we did, they were small, right? So we don't really have a comparative data. We haven't done any major in-person events like our annual conference. We haven't had it for the last 2 years. What I will say is that our print community went online in large quantities, and we had a 4-day virtual Edge Fusion event back in May across the globe. We followed the sun. Obviously, that has benefits. We had attendance that we never had before, close to 4,000 attendees from 91 countries. Now, normally at a physical D-Scoop event, that doesn't happen, right? It's say in the US or in Europe or in Asia, maybe we have 20, 30 countries, but that's about it. So it's very different. I don't really have comparative data that Sabine has to share.
Perfect. Actually, that's a great kind of a great segue there, Peter, just talking about kind of what have you learned from moving into more of a dominant online experience? And out of like necessity, you as well had an online component, but then it became the most dominant form for a period of time, as you said, 2 years. Kind of besides the geographic reach expanding, which is tremendous, what else sort of have you learned? What was the good? What was the bad? Maybe what was the thing that you learned that maybe bandwidth or something like that, kind of the challenges and the learning points?
Well, I think an important differentiator between in-person and online is obviously why would you go, right? So why do you go? Like again, like what Sabine was saying about trade shows and how important they are, I think an important element there is maybe not necessarily to see the technology, but to really engage with others and discuss what you're seeing with the vendor, with other users, right? So, and having that environment of conversation, which is that rich additional layer that you cannot sort of get virtual. I will say, I think, positive learnings is the willingness to engage online and sort of accept, like you, Stephen, right? So we didn't do a lot of webinars prior to COVID. We did one 2 weeks after, say, Europe was in a major lockdown, and we had 400 people sign up, which was like, what's happening? We have no, everyone was thirsty for information, but also engaging with each other. We got a lot of incoming requests for people to connect and asking questions and creating an environment where this is much more common now than it was before. So, taking that leap. And I think, over time, growing that pent-up demand for being able to meet in person, even smaller gatherings are much more sought after than just, the bigger events where, yes, more people can gather. But, those would be certainly the learnings that I have over time.
Sabine, I know you had the virtual Drupa as well. I know learning experiences were had. What were your takeaways from that, moving to that format before?
Now, that was indeed a unique experience, the 4-day virtual event. And a big learning was, as Peter just underlined as well, that technology or even technique doesn't always or is not always under full control. I think that's an experience that everybody had, even our big exhibitors and customers that did their own PR events or showrooms in a digital manner. And so one thing for sure, you need to be safe with all the technology environment. And the experience our customers and participants had. One thing for sure, reach is a huge advantage, and as well the fact that no travel expenses or hotel rooms have been in place, but that you easily join and access any kind of knowledge transfer. On the other side, engagement, interaction, and I think one huge priority is lead generation. So that's what everybody more or less confirmed. That during virtual events or even during their own events, that's certainly a big challenge. And obviously, lead generation or new contacts and acquiring new customers is in general one of the biggest targets, and that is not or has not been very satisfactory on digital platforms. I think moderation is key as well. So we had during virtual Drupa 2 moderators that were really very nicely taking care for our speakers and for the overall conference program. And one thing for sure as well, not everybody was used to be on a digital stage. So it's a kind of ability that people had to adapt as well, to learn how to interact, engage with the audience. And a chat functionality is great. But again, probably does not substitute, it's not an overall or satisfying a substitute for live interaction, because I think body language and motivation that can be created via an audience that is live and is simply creating a different spirit as well for the one who's speaking and for the audience that is trying to interact as well in a community environment. So I think that's one, or these are some very important learnings. On the other side, we, for example, did build up for the or after the 4-day event a so-called virtual library. That was a great experience as well, because everybody who missed being or joining virtual Drupa during that time has been able to freely access until the end of this year even every single keynote speech or even live web session that has been delivered by our customers. So that's certainly, I think, a big added value and advantage as well for us as organizers, because during Drupa you don't have the time to sit in a conference or in a keynote for 30 minutes or even longer. So I very much appreciated the fact that even after that event with much more time, I could dive into a knowledge transfer and much more intensively listen to speakers, and that's, I think, an advantage that will stay for the future as well, because streaming of content and live conferences is, I think, a very, very effective and a valuable effect for the future.
That's a great point. I, in fact, found myself going to the library as well, too, because sometimes I start a session, was pulled away for work, and then to be able to come back to it it's a tremendous, tremendous tool for sure. That actually is a great point. Sabine, obviously that you're saying about maybe bringing that forward even with the in-person. So you could kind of almost see like a hybridization of an in-person, but with a more supported digital element. Do you see in trade shows moving forward?
I think the future might combine the best of both worlds. So feedback from customers, and we are regularly in contact, and their experiences have been that they all look very much forward again to in-person events, because they experience that, as I just said, sales is a different topic on a digital level or even on a physical event, and spontaneous encounters as well are happening on physical shows and not necessarily on digital platforms. So networking effects, and we are all no avatars, but we are human beings, and we would like to see a customer journey where we engage with all our senses. We touch, feel, talk, and even sense the product or samples. And specifically when it comes up to capital goods, I think machinery and let's say the print industry very much engages with let's say with the technology and with innovation. And I think that's a completely different experience, just experiencing that on a platform that is a physical one, and it's completely different than just simply having that on a digital let's say level. So I think we certainly, when it comes up to content and conference content, that will be the future as well, to invest into that streaming services and to add value and to engage much earlier even with the audience on a worldwide level. So you have many advantages how you can connect and engage and stay connected with the community prior to an event and afterwards. But again, if I just may add that, also the previous shows I just mentioned that took place on our fairground in November and in October, the medical show and the occupational safety show. Interesting enough, companies that were, or that has been the offer, or were able to, for example, to book live web sessions and streaming sessions, they rather didn't want that, because they said, we are now here physically and we wanted to engage physically, and will not that much look forward to doing a lot of streaming or even live web sessions. We want to concentrate on our personal meetings happening at the trade fair. And I think only time will tell how the industry will engage and involve with new technology and digital elements. However, we as an organizer, a trade fair organizer, we will certainly increase our digital offer on a modular basis for customers. And we have been already to a certain extent digital and hybrid prior to the crisis, with interactive hall plans, with blogs, with let's say digital elements for the customer side. And so we will intensively monitor the ongoing offers and requests and requirements of our customers and adapt where necessary.
Perfect. Peter?
I think just building on what we were talking about before, right? So obviously in the beginning, there was this sort of trying to replicate what happens live online, which is just fundamentally different. And I think that's something that, going back to what we did back in May, it's critical that the platform you choose and the intent, like Sabine said, the journey of the attendees, what they are prepared for. And we did get a lot of feedback from the event back in May that people felt it was the closest to live that they could get, right? So you did see friendships, and they were able to just quickly video chat with each other and do different things. Obviously, it's technology that's still in between, but they did approach it in a slightly different way. And I think that would also apply to a future, whether it's hybrid or just in person or just online. There are different dynamics, and I think exhibitors need to adjust to that. It is the same as if you would go to if you exhibit at a trade show and you would sit in the corner and be on your phone all the time. You don't engage, right? And you can't complain about the lack of traffic or anything else, because you're just not out there. I think digital does take away a bit of those barriers where it's even more important that you do that, but you use the full spectrum and not just sort of the timings of the event itself. And yes, I mean, the content you create or the content you share, whether that's in person or online or hybrid, it has a very long shelf life, right? So you have the long tail, as Sabine was saying about her library, we have the same as well. Traffic to our website is substantially up compared to 2 years ago, where there is a lot of thirst for knowledge and innovation, but also engagement around that type of content. So you do see different dynamics, and I would certainly foresee, a main driver is, yes, why would people attend? As Sabine said, conferences and education is really good to consume sort of online. But then again, if you go a level deeper around engagement, you definitely would like some type of in-person component. Or something that helps as well is when people are connected prior and post. So either they know each other, or there's sort of a preparation cycle before, where they have met before a few times online, so they get to know each other. And there's a certain level of friendship, or at least camaraderie that they share, and they feel open to discuss whatever they're going to see. And it's the same as going to Drupa, right? So you see a lot of activity, going to Drupa or at the show itself, trying to connect with others, and in many cases using online channels to connect, because it is just, there's a lot of people out there. So I foresee a certain a hybrid future for events, for our events. I would see it in general for events, but being very purposeful about the use of whatever platform that is, online or in person, and making sure the content is appropriate for that platform.
Perfect. I'm actually going to read more of a statement from one of our attendees here. Mike has made a statement here. Correct. Humans are social creatures, and the need to be in contact and share thoughts, ideas, and their experiences is crucial for the success of any developers and consumers of products. So I could definitely see that, especially Peter being like a user group based. It's a lot of collaboration and a lot of sharing of ideas and best practices and things like that. You kind of touched on it a bit. I don't know if it's almost better to have met face-to-face previously to then have a connection that you could do virtually after, because it's sort of almost hard to make a cold introduction virtually and move forward sort of a depth. But sort of a question, kind of a little tie in a little bit to that. And Sabine had also kind of mentioned about the pharmaceutical show or medical show, about the demonstration opportunities. You can do videos virtual, demos virtually. I've been on a lot, we've done them ourselves. But with the interchange of question and answer, I know we can submit through chats. An in-person, do you feel is a better for a physical demonstration in terms of the actual, like Sabine had alluded to, sort of body language and things like that? So you can kind of gauge the person's level of interest rather than just be a set of type through a virtual wall.
Yeah.
Question for me or Sabine?
Oh, my apologies. Sorry, Sabine, my apologies.
Yeah, sure. No, it's fine.
Fully underline again. I think that from an exhibitor perspective, the quality of a live demonstration is a completely different story than just showing machinery or technology on a digital level. And I think you can just simply explain and consult on a much different level. When you're just standing live or face-to-face to a person, and even let's say discuss any kind of topic or questions on a face-to-face level, then rather do it on a digital way. That's at least what companies as well provided as a feedback from their perspective for the last months, when they were forced, more or less due to the pandemic, to only have that on a digital basis. And I think, if I may just add that, and I think that's an overall experience, feedback has been so far that there's a certain kind of digital fatigue. So everybody, as you just said in the beginning as well, we are all sitting for hours and hours during for the past months in front of our screens and have one video session after the other. And honestly spoken, and that has been approved as well, your concentration simply drops after some hours. If you only just are forced to interact with the audience and with your customers on a digital screen, it's much more different than when you're walking the aisles, when you're just as well moving your body, and when you're talking to people, when you're interacting with all your senses, you will remain much fresher than just sitting in front of a screen. And honestly spoken, many people were quite honest to say as well, yes, we registered for a digital event, but at the end of the day, we did parallel after some time, we did did something different, or we just muted ourselves and we didn't follow because it's so, it takes your energy. It's energy consuming to concentrate what you are doing on regular show days for 6, 7 or more hours. To do that only sitting in front of a screen, you simply have to encourage yourself to remain as concentrated as you want to be. I think that's as well a completely different story, just being on a live conference, community event, or even trade fair. Completely different story.
You're exactly right. Not even like, it's great you said that about physically walking, but even changes of focal length. Looking at a static screen at the same focal distance the whole time, you almost have to make yourself look away so that you're looking and your eyes can adapt to a different focal length. So, Peter, do you have anything to weigh in on that as well?
Yeah, no, just something that we've seen within our member base is that it's becoming more of a group type of evaluation and decision, right? So either it's going physically, but taking a group from the company to go and evaluate new technology. Now you see that it's happening sort of from within a business, right? So there would be groups of people together, and what we've seen is that we have companies doing that together, like rather than just a one-on-one type of conversation. They basically say, okay, we're going to bring our sort of tech operators together or operations team together, and the other company does it as well. They probably have met once or twice before in person, so there is a certain level of trust. As we would say, they've seen each other, the whites of each other's eyes at the bar at a D-Scoop event, and there is a level of trust that they then discuss between each other. They bring in a vendor and say, hey, demonstrate this new technology, and it becomes more of it sort of gets close to what happens in person, but that sensory part is lacking. So there is a different experience. I think there's also a perception from some of our members, at least, that they're probably not so much concerned about the technology itself. They're much more interested in how it's being implemented and applied in another business. So sort of like a peer-to-peer buying, reference experience, what they're looking for.
That's actually a great point too, Peter, that you made. So almost in a hybrid model of a trade show, like the C-suite group of the company could go and attend in live and see the physical demonstrations, but virtually they could have their production team, their finance team, their IT, basically being over their shoulder virtually to sit through it as well. And then they can kind of almost collaborate as a team decision based on ROIs and things like that as well.
Correct. Yeah.
I think that could work very well, Sabine, as well too, for Drupa, having the same sort of model where you have the key decision makers. Obviously a large financial investment to fly to Dusseldorf. And when I was there, it is the presidents and C-suite of the respective companies, but now they can have almost their decision-making team or influencers there as well, virtually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
That's actually sort of almost an exciting tool that's almost been created by this sort of event having to move virtual, and now we can move into a hybrid, and you can almost expand your attendees, so to speak, but have like a large virtual attendee as well. I guess that would be sort of how you would convince some of your vendors, or maybe Sabine, I should ask you rather than state to you, but how are you convincing some of your vendors to go forward and have the physical trade show component again as well?
Yeah, it's at the end of the day, what I just said, it's all about lead generation and as well maintaining good contacts with existing customers. And I think looking at a trade fair, we're in regular times, and we are very much convinced that we will get back there, even probably not right now or in the upcoming 12 months. But how can you find so intensively contacts, existing ones and new ones, as like at trade fairs that are taking place, and be so effective and intensive in networking opportunities as well in demonstrations? I think that's still one big advantage of physical trade shows or on-site trade fairs, where you really have the opportunity to demonstrate your, let's say, your core competences in a brilliant way, several days in a round, and just maintain the contact with your worldwide customers, other than just as well speaking from a visitor perspective, traveling Europe or even the world. I think both sides simply have a completely different experience and customer journey and quality experience. And it's as well all about networking opportunities next to the trade fair, that you really can much more intensively dive into contacts than you can do via a digital, let's say, screen. And I think KPIs or targets that usually exhibitors have prior to a trade fair can much better, or will be much more met via a physical trade show than with digital elements, obviously. And that's what we heard from our customers themselves. So they were obviously not always very satisfied with their events digitally held, and by that, yeah, they come up with their own arguments that are in favor for live events and on-site events.
That's a great point. They can monetize those contacts at a much higher rate, I'm sure, than it could be for a virtual event, because like you said, the engagement is much more in depth.
Yeah, and if you're looking for new contacts, I mean, spontaneous encounters simply as well are not possible on digital formats, as long, like Peter, with a community event where you really know each and every single participant, or just in general much more intensively interact with the audience. That's probably still different than in comparison to a trade fair, where you really are looking forward as well to, yeah, let's say, to generating new contacts and leads. And I think that's as well a very big advantage of on-site events.
Peter, would you like to share?
Yep. Thanks for teeing it up, Sabine. Yes, I think the difference is that you know, DScoop isn't a trade show. We are a community, and you know, we're available, you know, year round, every day of the week, basically. I will say mostly working days because it's a working community, but that makes it different for our sort of sponsors, where, you know, they can engage with our members on a year-round basis, whether that's, you know, they want to target a specific country or a specific type of audience. You know, we're able to sort of make these connections and organize activities around it. So for us, it's different, but there is obviously, you know, a lot of education to do in that case, to, on the one hand, either you know, really explain the virtues of the live experience, the in-person experience. You know, we have a similar challenge in the sense of, you know, explaining the virtues of being a member of a community that's year-round, because you would still see, oh, okay, there's a conference, so the focus is on the conference. However, there's a huge opportunity outside of those 3 days a year to engage and to work with that audience. So yeah, but I think both will work well together, as it's been the case with DScoop, right? It started 16 years ago with a, you know, 20-30 people event. You know, now we're a year-round community with 13,000-14,000 active members. So, you know, and a lot of that happens in between.
That's fantastic. Actually, I'll stick with you, Peter, if I may. With some of the supply chain issues going around in terms of deliveries for your in-person events, do you find yourself trying to kind of assist some of your exhibitors that would kind of, I don't know if you're taking on the logistics themselves, but kind of helping them build out their shipping times to realistically manage their expectation of what to get there in time for the show? Or is that basically something that they're on their own for, so to speak? So.
Yeah, well, I can speak of from the experience of the planning for the upcoming event. The team was like, including MC, was on site last week and at this venue, working with, you know, HP, one of our sponsors, but also with our other vendors that are shipping equipment. You know, they're aware that they need, you know, their first concern is the equipment available, right? Because that's already a challenge. And then second, is it in a location where it's even convenient to bring it to the show? So yes, those times are certainly changing, and you have to take that into account. We have a company that takes care of the whole setup of our exhibition, and they support our sponsors and our exhibitors with shipping their equipment and making sure it's convenient and helping out where they can. But lead times are certainly longer, and it's much more okay, what should be on display, and do we have it, and where is it, and how do we get it to where it's supposed to be? And these timings have changed. But I also think because of the but the intensity obviously is a bit lower, so the lead times can become a bit longer, but they definitely need to plan far ahead to make sure that they get the equipment there including the personnel to actually, if required, to bring them in to install the equipment. Yes.
Absolutely. Sabine, I know the logistic large undertaking that your shows are as well. Are you finding that you're managing and helping that logistics chain on behalf of some of your sponsors and exhibitors, kind of giving them projected lead times and things like that?
Yeah, we're trying as well to support where we can. So just talking about Drupa, we still have a different horizon. However, just facing the disruptive supply chains and the fact that there has been shortage in terms of resources and material created a lot of challenges for, I think, the big importing customers on the exhibitor side that really were depending on China or even on other nations worldwide. So we can only hope that that supply chains may improve or will improve in the upcoming weeks and months, because that certainly lead to the fact that even short working periods have been let's say happened in the previous weeks and months, because let's say companies were unable to continue with their production due to the lack of material. So that is a big issue for many European companies that are depending on components and material that has been usually purchased from, specifically as well, from Asia and from the US.
Yeah.
I'd like to actually give both of you the opportunity. I'll start with Sabine to kind of give us a sneak peek of what Drupa is coming up with, sort of unique things that are going to be at this next upcoming Drupa. Just kind of give you a chance to almost sell. I know I can't wait to go, but sort of sell other people on the virtues of this next Drupa.
Yeah, so we're all very much looking forward getting back to the market and having our sales kickoff, which is foreseen for February next year, so not too far away, which means like 30 months prior to the event. And I think already themes and topics that were relevant for Drupa 2020 are still on our agenda, specifically when it comes up to sustainability and as well to circular economy. I think nearly every major brand, a corporate company, supplier, manufacturer, or print service provider has that on the agenda. And if it's not yet an obligation by governmental rules and expectations, you have to follow, and you have to make sure that you're concentrating on questions how you can improve let's say your production, and what even brand owners expect from a product, how it is going to be produced, and the transparency that is working with that. So I think that has been already on the agenda for 2020, and we will certainly continue to provide content together with our partner associations and exhibitors focusing on that theme and topic. Then, needless to mention, it's the ongoing digitization, and by that as well automation and supply efficiency. Other than that, it's as well, depending on digitization, it's the connected consumer. We're always on 24 hours. So what does that mean in terms of expectations from customers facing the print and packaging industry? And so I think a lot of themes that we had on our agenda will continue to be analyzed, because the major global trends that are affecting every single industry are as well relevant for the print and packaging industry. So we all have to scope with that, and we're looking forward to much more intensively diving into them in the upcoming weeks and months.
Fantastic. Peter, what can we expect on the upcoming D-Scoop event?
Yeah, certainly reiterate Sabine's words around sort of focus on topics and interests, sustainability, automation, smart factories, connected factories, but also the more general business challenges around staff, finding the right talent, retaining talent. So from a content perspective, those will be significant topics. We're designing the event very differently than we would normally do, because it's going to be, well, we're saying we're trying this again, right? So we ran this path a couple of times in the last 2 years, but the intent for us obviously is to bring the audience together and allowing the schedule for it. So not as densely packed as it normally is, with this sort of fear of missing out, but really allowing time for people to reconnect and having that sensory experience Some of our keynotes are picked specifically for those purposes to create hopefully a celebration of digital print and continue the drive for transforming the industry into a fully digital industry, which is what our community wants and what our audience is keen to achieve. And what I am sensing is there's this so-called pent-up demand for meeting in person. As you said, Stephen, you can't wait to fly to Düsseldorf. I can't wait to take the train to Düsseldorf. I look forward to that for sure. And so yes, there is, and I think that events will change in that type of structure where there is really a need for people to meet and connect, and that will be probably the main driver for our attendees to come. Obviously, the technology, right? There'll be a packed exhibit. HP will be there in full force. Our partners will be there in full force. It's the first time that many of the technologies that were supposed to be launched at Drupa in 2020 haven't yet seen, a global presence on a trade show, in a trade show environment. And we hope to bring that all together. And again, D-Scoop is a social event, so there'll be social activities in and around where the technology is there. So you're really driving those engagements and sensory experiences and hopefully adding a bit of fun to the process as well, where we can celebrate coming back to being in person and meeting in person in a safe environment for sure. But yeah, very much looking forward to having that hopefully soon in March next year, obviously. So
that's fantastic. Well, thank you both. I would encourage our attendees to stay on the line. We are in fact going to be having some draws for some great prizes momentarily. But in the meantime, just before we get to the draws, I'd like to thank our sponsors today. Just waiting for get the PowerPoint, or I can just move right through. We'd like to thank our platinum sponsors, which is Canon, HP, Konica Minolta, Spicers, and Swiss Q Print. I'd like to also thank our gold sponsors, Adobe, Fujifilm, Graphics Canada, Kodak, and Heidelberg, as well as our silver sponsor, Sydney Stone. Also like to thank HP for providing the technology for today's seminar. At this point, I would like to invite Sabine and Peter to help draw numbers for these prizes that we'll be giving away. They've been graciously donated by these representative companies. Just before we begin, the number that is given will correspond to an attendee, and the prize winner will be contacted using the email that you registered to attend this event. So if I'd like to invite Sabine to please pick a number between 7 and 126 for the pair of leaf tickets donated courtesy of Fujifilm.
So my first pick is going to be 10.
10. Fantastic. I will now ask Peter to pick one pair of leaf tickets that was donated generously by Heidelberg.
My first pick will be number 6.
Oh, my apologies, Peter. It has to be between 7 and 126.
Oh, 7. Sorry.
No problem. Would you like
so then
126?
It's okay. So then it doesn't 68.
68. There. Fantastic. I have the sense that 6 is one of your lucky numbers. So I'd like to invite Sabine to pick for the pair of leaf tickets donated courtesy of Spicers.
18.
18. Fantastic. I would now like Peter to pick for the $150 gift card donated courtesy of AGFA.
93.
93. Fantastic. Now Sabine's up for a $100 gift card donated courtesy of Cambridge Label.
66.
66. Fantastic. Back to Peter for the $100 gift card donated by Italic Press.
35.
35. Fabulous. Sabine's up for the $150 gift card courtesy of Konica Minolta.
125.
125. Fantastic. Next will be for Peter, the $150 gift card courtesy of Marquee Bookbinding.
20.
20. Fantastic. Sabine, $150 gift card courtesy of Sydney Stone.
95.
95. Fantastic. Peter, your last pick would be 1 year free license to Adobe Creative Cloud courtesy of Adobe.
Oh, that's a good one. The lucky number is 53.
53. Fantastic. Sabine, your last selection will be for the HP Sprocket Portable Photo Printer, donated courtesy of HP.
80.
We have 18 previously picked.
80, sorry.
Oh, sorry, my apologies. Sorry. 80. Fantastic.
80.
And I will pick the last for a 360-degree human body inductive automatic follow-up bracket smart live phone holder and stand, donated courtesy of Kodak. And I myself will pick 53. No, my apologies, 55. There we go. Fantastic. I would like to thank our attendees for joining us today. I would also very much like to thank our panel for dedicating the time today to sit with us today. Because they've donated so graciously of their time and knowledge, the DIA is going to make a donation on behalf of both of our panelists to the Canadian Print Scholarship Fund in both of your honors. Our next webinar will be Wednesday, January the 19th from 12:30 to 1:30, and our focus will be embellishment, the panel discussion with manufacturers as well as users. On behalf of the DIA board, I wish you all a happy and safe holiday season, Merry Christmas, and a prosperous New Year. Thank you very much for attending, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Well, everybody, that's a wrap. Thank you so much. I'm gonna end this here now in a second. I'm gonna press pause.